not everyone needs to build a AAA game in order to have a successful gaming project. It has to be a game that really focuses on providing an entertaining experience. I kid you not, in 9 out of 10 cases, those are traditional gamers that played Call of Duty, Fortnite, Apex Legends, and now switched to Off the Grid because they simply like it better. We've onboarded over 16 million unique wallets and have done over 600 million transactions on our testnet. Traditional gamers play games because they want to have an entertaining experience. They don't care about earning money from the game. I personally am not a huge fan of labels. Web 2, Web 3, Web 55, doesn't really matter, right? To me, gaming is gaming. Give them an awesome experience that they can't have anywhere else.
Hello Play to Earn community, I'm Jawad, the CMO at Play to Earn and your host at the Crypto Game Changers podcast, the show where we deconstruct growth, go-to-market strategy, and speak with one of the best builders in the space. For season 2, we're bringing on incredible founders and builders to bring you insights that you've never seen before. For this particular episode, we have a very special guest. He is a serial entrepreneur and is now leading Web3 gaming innovation at one of the most successful Web3 gaming studios so far. I'm talking about Gunzilla Games. And if you haven't heard about Gunzilla, you might be living under a rock. They're behind the first AAA blockchain-enabled shooter that launched on PlayStation, Xbox, and very recently on Steam. I'm talking about Off the Grid. Let's welcome Theodore Agranat, the director of Web3 at Gunzilla Games, to the show. Hello, Theodore. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me here. What a great intro. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Happy to have you on the show as well. So I've gone through your LinkedIn, right? I've seen the series of projects that you've been part of, things that you've founded, things you've led, and then I see Gunzilla. What's the story here? How did you make the shift from, a traditional Web 2 leader to diving into Web 3? What inspired you to get in?
Well, after several decades of being a serial entrepreneur in Web 2, I come across Bitcoin and crypto in 2012. And subsequently to that, came across Gunzilla Games in 2021. Fell in love with the team, the project, the ability to revolutionize not only Web 3 gaming, but Web 2 gaming as well. And have been with the team now for 3 years and joined full-time last year as the director of Web 3.
Awesome. And was there like an aha moment where you're like, this is the team? What convinced you that Gunzilla was the perfect match for you?
Several things that I found to be very rare in Web3. When I first met the team had in 2021 the founders had already spent $15 million of their own hard-earned money on building the initial prototype, on onboarding close to 100 employees full-time at that point in time already in their headquarters in Frankfurt. They onboarded Neil Blomkamp as a co-founder. He's the world kind of renowned sci-fi film director behind the hits District 9, Chappie, and Elysium with Matt Damon. He's a co-founder. And had a fully playable prototype. So that's already something that is extremely rare in Web3. It's even rare in Web 2, if you will, right? Having such dedication and commitment to the project. So they built all of that over 2 years before ever raising a single dollar externally.
I see.
That's one. Two, they approached the project very, very differently than most Web3 projects that I had spoken to prior or worked with prior. They approached the project from the perspective of how do we onboard mainstream users, and not from the perspective of how do we teach people to use a wallet and on-off-ramp fiat and swap tokens, but from the perspective of and from the acknowledgement that these are showstoppers. These are not educational problems to overcome. These hurdles in Web3, these technological hurdles in Web3 are not educational problems, they're simply showstoppers. So the project and the team approached everything from the perspective of how do we remove all of these barriers? How do we completely abstract the technology away into the background to make onboarding of traditional users very, very seamless and easy? And I had never seen anything like that before, and I'd never seen anyone execute successfully on that before. And that was really the aha moment where I said, hey, yeah, this is something we can onboard hundreds of millions of gamers that simply would not be possible to do with traditional Web3 approaches, because in traditional Web3 approaches, everything is predicated on setting up a wallet, swapping tokens, on-off ramping fiat. All of these things that I just mentioned are abstracted away at Gunzilla Games with our Gunzi chain and all of our products that are run on top of it.
You know, that's a brilliant point. We've seen many founders and builders code the same, but rarely execute what they're talking about. The same thing that you mentioned, they agree to that take that you have, but in terms of execution, you rarely see that in play. But before we dive in deeper, just for the viewers who are not familiar with the Gunzilla ecosystem, how would you describe the entire ecosystem? How is it connected with Off the Grid, the Guns ecosystem? Could you give us an overview?
Absolutely. So Gunzilla Games is the main developer that developed several different products. One is our flagship product, Off the Grid, which, as you already mentioned, is the world's first AAA blockchain-enabled game that launched on Xbox and PlayStation, coming next month to Steam as well. But in order to support Off the Grid, we also built the Gunzi ecosystem, which is the world's first AAA Web3 gaming ecosystem. As part of that ecosystem, we have a custodial and non-custodial wallet solution. We have a visual blockchain scanner. We have, of course, our NFT marketplace. We have our NFT minting engine. We have a companion app and even a companion game. All of these tools already built, running in testnet, and now also mainnet successfully for a while. And all of these tools support our flagship product, Off the Grid. However, after having built all of these tools for Off the Grid, we of course realized that all of these pains that we went through in order to have now a working product on a working platform, other gaming publishers and game developers are facing as well. They have the same issues in regards to what chain to launch on, which tools to use for wallet, how to abstract it all away, how to make it all easy to use. So we have now offered Gunzi as a solution to other web developers, game developers, other Web3 tool developers and dApp developers. And all of that is available for free, and API, SDK, etc. And we are onboarding now our first couple of developers to our ecosystem.
Amazing. And I'm pretty sure, a lot of developers are going to come onto the Guns ecosystem and utilize the products that you guys have built to hopefully, give the same experience in terms of user experience that you guys are offering already. And you've mentioned a couple of products, right? You've mentioned the ecosystem, the game, and your suite of new tools that are coming in. And that, I imagine, would require a good amount of investment. And a lot of the founders that we speak to or we hear from, they struggle with raising funds. And according to Google, you guys have raised approximately 100 million over the past 5 years. So the question is, what's one mistake that founders usually make when pitching AAA Web3 games to investors?
Well, I think there's several issues at hand here. Number one, not everyone needs to build a AAA game in order to have a successful gaming project, right? I don't think that AAA is a prerequisite to a successful project. We've seen amazing hits. For example, Among Us is a game that has no AAA graphics, not very complex gameplay, really is a very simple game loop in and of itself, but yet is one of the most entertaining and engaging IPs over the last couple of decades, right, that came out. So it's really not a matter, in my opinion, of AAA versus not AAA and fundraising for AAA versus not fundraising for AAA. It's more about any developer in gaming needs to focus on onboarding of users outside of Web3 as well. There simply are not enough, gamers and or active user wallets in Web3 to build a viable kind of long-term gaming project. In my humble opinion, any Web3 project, but we're talking specifically about gaming right now. So what investors want to see is that you have not only the desire, but also the ability to execute on a plan on how to engage with, convert, and retain non-Web3 users for your game. And one of the kind of key cornerstones of that is to, of course, have an easy onboarding experience. You
Yep.
can't ask people to set up wallets, learn how to swap tokens, learn how to on off ramp fiat, etc. You already lost them on step one. So that's one. Two, it has to be a game that really focuses on providing an entertaining experience to the gamer. Otherwise, there's no way of onboarding traditional gamers. Instead of wrapping staking into a gamified experience, which
Mm-hmm.
is what a lot of the kind of 2021 project onwards have been providing. That would be something that a traditional gamer would simply not be interested in. Because traditional gamers, let's go back to basics. Traditional gamers play games because they want to have an entertaining experience. They want to have an immersive, entertaining experience in playing a game. They don't care about earning money from a game.
Mm-hmm. True.
They do care, as we found out, about asset ownership, which is really where we're focusing on. We call it play to own, right, instead of the old moniker of play to earn. So that is something that is important for gamers, and we are leaning very hard into that. But for companies that are raising funding, those would be the two main things to focus on, right? Build a real game, really engaging, entertaining, immersive game loop, number one. And number two, onboard traditional gamers by abstracting away all of the complex interactions that traditional Web3 folks have to experience.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for those insights. I think all the builders or aspiring builders watching that will take that note and hopefully execute in that direction. So, you have fundraise, you have the launch, and you have decent success. But let's talk about the success. Can you share some metrics or data points around the ecosystem? Like how large has off the grid become? How large has the ecosystem become? Can you give us any insight into what we're talking about here?
Absolutely. Well, we've accomplished what, in my opinion, really nobody ever has accomplished before in Web3, and that is we've onboarded mainstream and mass.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? Specifically, when we launched early access on the 8th of October of 2024, so fairly recently, since then, we've onboarded over 16 million unique wallets and have done over 600 million transactions on our testnet. So those numbers are, mind-numbing for traditional Web3 projects. For Web2, those are, very, very normal numbers. One thing that I'll add, the team prior to this, one other thing that impressed me a lot about the team is the team prior to this built a game called Warface. It was also a shooter, where they onboarded 150 million gamers.
I
So
see.
these guys know how to build massive, 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 gaming experiences. This is not their first rodeo, so to speak. But in terms of numbers, yeah, I mean, over 500 million transactions since last October, over 16 million unique wallets. And now we're focusing on migrating these wallets over to mainnet, which launched on May 31st of this year.
This is crazy. Those numbers are absolutely mad. And congratulations on hitting these milestones.
Thank you so much.
And many founders actually struggle with early traction. At what point did Gunzilla start experiencing the snowball effect? When did things become organic? When did people start discovering? So at what point did that occur? Do you recall any particular moment?
I think, well, obviously, the obvious one is that on October 8th, people finally had publicly access to our game. Prior to October 8th of last year, we had what we called the Pioneer program that was running basically a closed beta experience that was invite only. So the first inflection point was when the game was opened up to everyone and everybody was able to actually download it, play it. People loved the game. The second inflection point was our $600,000 All-Stars tournament, which launched, shortly thereafter, where we invited the world's biggest streamers to stream, of course, and play the game over a $600,000 tournament over a number of hours. That was the point where mainstream gamers, mainly for the first time, were exposed to off the grid. In addition to that, of course, we hit the third most streamed game worldwide on Twitch several times in a row as a result of some of these marketing activities. We also hit number one most downloaded game, most downloaded free game on Epic Games. And all of these kind of points were very, very big inflection points for us where we got exposed to very, very large new audiences. But in addition to that, we had smaller but still nevertheless very important other inflection points. And those were, people for the longest time wanted solo mode.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, paused their playing activity because they couldn't find good teammates. They're like, hey, I'll be back once solo is launched. So once we launched solo, we had a big, big, big kind of rush and push. And that was a great inflection point when we launched the ability to invite cross-platform squad teammates. That was massive. That had
Yeah.
been a feature that people have been waiting for a very long time, including myself, so I can play on PlayStation with my son who's on PC. So that was also awesome. So it was just a series of these kind of large inflection points that were in some cases very, very carefully and meticulously architected and created because we knew that this is what people wanted in order to invite their friends and play with their friends. And in some cases, they happened more surprisingly, I don't want to say accidentally because we still worked on them, but more surprisingly, for example, our Board Ape Yacht Club kind of collab skin resulted in the fastest ever of our trailer reaching over 4 million views. I think it was like 4 days and we had 4 million views on that. So that was a very, very positive and pleasant surprise. Also a kind of a major inflection point of kind of a very massive kind of Web3 specific collaboration as opposed to our more Web2 and gaming specific collaborations prior to that with some top streamers like Scump, Ninja, etc.
Yep. So you mentioned that you wanted to play with your son as well, and I don't know where you're based, but basically the question is, what type of demographic are you guys attracting, and what regions are you seeing the most traction in? Are they Western, Southeast Asia? Where are you seeing the most traction in terms of demographic?
We really, worldwide, we're deployed worldwide. But in terms of early traction, of course, US and Europe. Initially, we were just available in the English language, but then we started doing localizations. Now we have Spanish and German and even Japanese and a bunch of other languages. So with some of these localizations, Latin America became a massively important market for us. Asia, Southeast Asia is a massively important market to us. So really, there's no kind of boundaries, so to speak. Gamers are worldwide. People love our game. It's really more a matter of making sure that people have necessary technical ability to play the game. It is a game that is specific to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, so older consoles will not be able to play the game. And on the PC, the minimum requirement is a 3060 GPU or higher. However, we did also create an integration with NVIDIA's GeForce Now program, where people on lower end hardware, on Mac, on mobile, on iPads, on even TVs, are able to play the game if they have a reasonably stable and fast internet connection.
Oh, that's great. That is great. So distribution all across the board. Yep.
Correct.
So usually we often see in Web3 games that Web3 gamers hop from one game to another. But it doesn't seem to be the case with Off the Grid. How are you guys managing your players so well? How are you retaining them so well? Do you guys have any specific retention strategies that you guys are deploying, or has it all been just organic that they have fun, they stay, and it's like a network effect?
Well, yeah. The retention strategy is simple. Give them an awesome experience that they can't have anywhere else, or that is very difficult to have anywhere else. So, I mean, you're going back to basics. However, several things for myself, and talking to my kids, talking to random folks that I'm playing with online, because I love loading. I load into the game practically every day. I oftentimes play with random folks, and I always ask them a couple of very important questions that are important for us, and that is, where did you hear about us? And most recently, it's always TikTok, Instagram, etc. And then, what did you play before this? And then, why did you choose to play Off the Grid, or what do you like better about Off the Grid? And I kid you not, in 9 out of 10 cases, those are traditional gamers that played Call of Duty, Fortnite, Apex Legends, and now switched to Off the Grid because they simply like it better. And it's a variety of reasons. It ranges from the one that we feel is really important, which is asset ownership. Hey, I can own my own assets. There's a peer-to-peer marketplace where I can trade the stuff that I don't want any longer for stuff that I do want, as well as the ability to have the interchangeable limbs, which is a very unique feature, unique just to our game, where you're not locked into specific tools or the only things that you can change your weapons. You can actually have an arm that's a grenade launcher. You could have an arm that's an energy shield. You could
Mm-hmm.
have an arm that's a grappling hook. You have legs that make you run faster, legs that make you jump higher. And what's really fun is you can shoot somebody else's legs or arms off, run over there, kind of steal their limbs if you like their limbs better, and kind of go on about your day, making for very, very fun kind of course, video content that some of our content creators create. But point being that those are the reasons I'm hearing traditional gamers are playing our game over other games. Now, in terms of what I think, I have an anecdotal story out of my own life, right, where my two teenage boys were very, very heavily into Fortnite for
Mm-hmm.
several years, and they spent several thousands of dollars of their own hard-earned cash and summer jobs and Christmas money from grandparents, etc., on skins in Fortnite. And to them, skins in Fortnite were more important than even real world skins because they gave you kind of your social status in high school, etc. It was really, really crazy to see that transition over the last, kind of half a decade to decade of, kids loving digital goods significantly better than
Mm-hmm.
real world goods. Now, after several years of playing Fortnite, they lost interest. They were moving on to the next game. And my oldest comes to me and says, Dad, so how do I get my money back? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I spend money on these digital items, on these skins. I want to get my money back, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, to them, it was the most obvious thing in the world that they own these digital assets. They spend their hard-earned cash on it, and they should be able to get the money out. So we get talking about EULA and how you're just renting these things. You don't
Mm-hmm.
really own them. And they were shocked. They couldn't believe the fact that, how is that fair, right? That you're paying for something that you actually do not own. So for me, hit close to home, but also I believe that in the future, gamers will demand asset ownership. I believe that in the future, gamers will simply not play games where they cannot own the assets that they either invested money in or simply invested a lot of time in, right, to obtain, to grind for, and to get. So that to me is a really, really important one that does also get mentioned by a lot of the folks that I play with. But it's like I said, also other things as well, like just the gameplay being different, the gameplay being more dynamic. Some people say, "Hey, I love the fact that your team." I obviously never disclose who I am, but they say, "Hey, that team has updates all the time. I've never played a game that gets updated every week. This is so cool." They listen to their community, they listen to the gamers, they update everything. It's always fun and fresh and exciting. So it's a bunch of different reasons. And again, I'm talking about traditional
Mm-hmm.
Web2 gamers, not folks that are in the Web3 industry.
Did you guys plan to target traditional Web2 gamers from the onset? Like, what was the overarching marketing strategy here? What, like, from initial to what it is now? What was it when you first started out? What is it now? And has it changed?
So what I always like to explain is that I personally am not a huge fan of labels. Web 2, Web 3, Web 55, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really matter, right? To me, gaming is gaming. So that's one. Two, you have specific tools that you can bring to the table to a gamer to make their experience better. And you can then choose, am I going to make the experience better or am I going to make the experience worse, in order to, let's say, have more profitability,
Mm-hmm.
which is what a lot of gaming companies choose by selling items that you can't resell, that you can't gift, that you can't trade, that you can't do anything with, that you can't own. So in my opinion, right, we always were targeting gamers in general, irrespective of their background, whether they were Web3 natives, whether they were Web2 natives, whether they were Web2 people switching to Web3. That really wasn't as important to us as all those people that want to play an engaging and entertaining, in this case, battle royale experience. And from that point, right, we went to, well, what are the tools that we could bring to the table that make the experience better
Mm-hmm.
besides the game? And in our opinion, asset ownership is one of these things that is absolutely essential. A peer-to-peer marketplace where people by themselves decide what things should be priced at, in our opinion, is essential. The ability of taking these items out of the game and then selling them on third-party marketplaces,
Mm-hmm.
in our opinion, is essential. Something that we will facilitate through our partnership with OpenSea. So that's how we looked at things. It wasn't, oh, are we going to market to Web3 users or we're going to market to Web2 users? It was a matter of how do we build the best game, the best battle royale game out there
Mm-hmm.
from all these perspectives: the gameplay, the experience with the assets, etc.
Interesting. Very interesting. And, I actually have to agree with that philosophy. At the end of the day, all gaming coincides. Like Web 2, Web 3 is just going to become gaming regardless. And so why not just market it that way from the onset? Were there any channels that were like surprisingly effective when you guys, began marketing? Usually when founders, especially within Web3, they look at Twitter as their primary channel when they start out. But were there any other channels when you guys were growing off the grid that you found that, hey, that's surprisingly doing well?
Well, like I said, to us, we had several interesting moments where some of the results exceeded our expectations around specific skins that we had
Mm-hmm.
created. Like I said, the April Fool's kind of event and campaign ended up, doing extremely, extremely well, which I think, was a very pleasant surprise. I mean, we knew it would do well, but it did extremely, extremely well, and that was awesome to see. We had massive success with our West Call skin, which is the biggest kick streamer in Latin
Mm-hmm.
America, or I think in the world actually. So anyway, we had massive success with that skin deployment and a lot of fun working on that. So yeah, it's just a lot of different kind of aspects that we work on, and all of them, of course, we work on because we expect to see good results.
Yeah.
But some of them, yeah, have even better results than we initially kind of plan or anticipate.
Interesting. Interesting. And so we have to talk about Avalanche because I've whenever I look at AVAX Gaming on Twitter, they have you mentioned anywhere in the top 5 tweets. Like they have Gunzilla off the grid. Something is always launching. So how important was and why did Gunzilla go with Avalanche?
So when we originally were looking at different blockchains to deploy on, we knew that one of our main requirements, if not the most important requirement, was to be able to have our own token for gas fees.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what was the kind of the foundation of being able to abstract away a lot of these complex technologies and concepts from the user. And when we tested a bunch of different blockchains, the only blockchain that allowed us to do that kind of almost out of the box was the Avalanche kind of, they used to call them subnets, now they call them Avalanche L1s. So building on top of Avalanche allowed us to execute on our strategy of abstracting all these complexities away from the user. So it was a very kind of important technological decision. And then as time went on and we started launching things, we also did realize that they have, like you said, right, gaming on AVAX, that they have an actually very, very massive and very helpful marketing arm as well that was also important for us over the years.
Awesome, awesome. So we're coming towards the end of the show, but I want to get some lessons out for future builders. Now, recently we've seen that several Web3 games have been shutting down. What do you think that? What do you think they missed that Gunzilla got right? I know we've spoken about several aspects, but if you want to hone it down, what do you think that they're missing?
Sure. So we touched on all of them actually already, right? One is build a real game, right?
Yeah.
Don't wrap staking into kind of a gamified staking experience. One other one that we didn't touch on is make the economy sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right from the outset, we said play to earn is not sustainable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a treasury that pumps out rewards and dilutes and inflates supply in hopes that you're going to have magically, your gamer base quadrupling and growing faster than the emissions that you are paying as rewards. It also rewards early supporters a lot at the expense of later supporters. So that from the get-go we knew wasn't sustainable. So build a sustainable economy. Make sure that the rewards are somehow tied to economic activity within your ecosystem. And last but not least, as I already mentioned, focus on making it a real game, like
Mm-hmm.
a really entertaining and engaging gaming experience that focuses on the gamer. And obviously, as I already mentioned, make sure that the onboarding is easy for regular folks as well, because there simply are not enough gamers in Web3 that care about gaming like a traditional gamer would, right? That care about gaming for the sake of gaming, as opposed to playing whatever the next play to earn game is because they can, make money off of that. Gaming traditionally is not something that you expect to make money off of, just like you don't expect to make money or return on your financial investment of, your $50 movie tickets, right? When you take your family to the movies, it is an entertainment experience that you spend money on to get entertainment in return. Now, there's different types of, entertainment, right? You can have an entertaining gaming experience and then, just kind of close your device and be done with it. Or you could have an entertaining gaming experience and then actually own all of the assets that you can now trade, sell, share, or just keep for later. And kind of clearly, right, we focused on the latter. So we want to make sure that people have an absolute blast playing the game, but at the same time, we want people to have something to show for all of the money that they spent or the time that they spent on the game. And this is where asset ownership comes into play. So I think those are the kind of top four things that most folks do not currently focus on yet. But I think over time, more and more people will look at Gunzilla and say, hey, that's the blueprint to follow, right? That's what we need to do in order to have, a long-term sustainable venture.
Absolutely. And I'm in agreement. So Gunzilla has had massive success already, and we have gone into several reasons why that is. But what's next for Gunzilla? What are you most excited about the roadmap ahead?
Sure. So we have two separate tracks. One is our flagship product, Off the Grid, where we're continuously launching new content packs every month, new skins, new battle passes. We have new game modes coming out. Solo mode just went full time. We just launched last week Team Deathmatch mode, which people absolutely love. So that's kind of one track to continue building the best battle royale game in the world. On the second track, we have our Gunzi ecosystem, where we will now be onboarding builders to build on our chain. Now we already have several builders that have brought market analytic tools to the table, etc. But we will also start having gaming companies launch their games on the Gunzi ecosystem, and kind of that's a separate track on continuously kind of building out the tools, onboarding builders, and expanding that kind of Web3 AAA gaming ecosystem.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing all the insights. I'm pretty sure that all the viewers, gamers, founders, builders, I think they got to learn something, something probably they were not aware of, or something that they weren't sure of in terms of strategy. So, it was lovely having you on the show, Theodore. Again, thank you for taking the time to speak with us at Play to Earn. Is there anything else that you would love to share for our viewers?
Oh, thanks for asking. First of all, thanks so much for having us here. Really appreciate it. The only thing I'd add is that, check us out on playoffthegrid.com. Download the game, the proof's in the pudding, so to speak. Take it for a spin, and follow us on socials, which is @playoffthegrid and @gunbygunz on X.
Thank you, Theodore, for coming out of the show. It was an absolute pleasure. And for all of you watching, go ahead and check out Off the Grid. It's an incredible game, and if you were an FPS player, you're in for a hell of a ride. And for all of the latest news around Off the Grid, check out playtoearn.com. Stay tuned for the next episode at Crypto Game Changers. Thank you for watching or listening to the Crypto Game Changers podcast, the only show where we bring builders, entrepreneurs, and creators who are pushing Web3 gaming forward. And if you are a builder or a gaming studio that is looking to reach a Web3 gaming audience, look no further. Head over to Play to Earn's Business Center to find the link down below, and we're going to help you supercharge your growth.